Y'all, today's show is so good.
But number one, I've never seen an intro like that.
It is my hope and desire that not only will episode 30 still be fun, but episode 300 will be even more fun. You are made for something great, so go and be awesome.
Ten seconds remaining.
Hello, and welcome to the show. My name is Renee Hastings, and I'm your host of Renee Speaks. Y'all, today's show is going to be so great, and that's partly because of our amazing sponsor, Wilbron. Wilbron is Alabama's premier public relations firm. If y'all have any PR needs, be sure to hit them up at www.wilbron.com. Y'all, today's guest is absolutely amazing. Her name is Ashlee Cervantes Thomas, and she is a veteran security executive with over 15 years of experience in security solutions and risk management. She holds an MBA from UC Davis and currently serves as a CEO of Guardian Protection Force, Inc. And she's also the founder of Guardian Secure Solutions, LLC. Based in Northern California, Ashlee has led numerous security professionals in armed security and executive protection. She's focused on delivering top-notch security services through strong core values. Y'all, put your hands together for Ashlee Cervantes.
Hi.
How are you?
Good morning. I hope I can live up to all the hype. That was such a wonderful introduction. So thank you for that, Renee.
Absolutely. Well, as I was sharing back in the green room before we went live, I am so excited to have you on today's show because we have never had anyone talk to our audience about the importance of safety and personal security. So as business owners and as women, this is something most of us don't naturally or normally think about. But you being a woman-owned security professional really resonates with me, and I'm sure will resonate with our audience as well, as you bring a perspective on a subject that we don't normally talk about. So I am super stoked about everything you have to say. So why don't we get started, Ashlee, and you tell us a little bit about how you even got to this place. Why did you decide to start a business like this?
That is such a fun story that I really enjoy sharing. And we really have to go way back in time to make it make sense. I'll try to keep it brief, but I went from the time I was 4 years old, I wanted to be a teacher. And everything I did was towards that end. As long as I could remember, that was the goal. I even had aspirations of getting into educational politics. It was just everything I had planned for my entire life. Well, I graduated with finishing up my credential in 2010. And for those of you that were around back then, certainly in California, but across the world and across the United States, there was some wild things happening. And teachers were getting laid off left and right. There was huge budget cuts and furloughs happening in the state of California, where I am from. And it just hit me one day, and I realized I don't know if I have a future in this career that I've been working towards my entire life. So rewind just a smidge. While going to school, I had taken some different odds and ends jobs, as most of us do. One of my favorites, where I really excelled, was as a retail associate. So I worked for a major retailer. I started off as an associate, folding clothes, greeting customers, cashiering, and just by happenstance, I got plucked into their loss prevention department. And so I was a young woman, a teenager at the time, and I was the only person in that division that looked or sounded like me. The team was led by mostly middle-aged white men, and I was this young Hispanic female. And it turns out that I was really great at catching people stealing things. And so I got mentored by some fantastic folks. A lot of them were former law enforcement, retired military, just had just a wonderful array of experience and just really wonderful human beings. And so I had that experience. Well, fast forward a little bit longer, I had stepped away from that after a few years to focus on my teaching credential and those things. And then I made this decision to leave education, and I just started applying for jobs. I had applied for an administrative position at a security company, a small security company in my hometown that was paying decent. And they loved that I had this loss prevention experience. Never mind that I had no HR payroll experience, which is actually what they were hiring me for. And so I started with them. I got that payroll, administrative, HR. I even dabbled a tiny bit in billing and accounting. It was a smaller company, so everybody wore a lot of hats. I got some fantastic experience. And then the founder of Guardian Protection Force, he actually plucked me out of that role and asked me to be his human resources director. And so that's where my journey really kind of took off quickly. And so without sharing my whole life story with you, the founder of that company, fast forward, that was in 2011. And in 2022, so 11 years later, I've been with the same company that whole time. And the founder named me CEO. And so he's still very involved in the company, and I'm very, very fortunate. With his blessing, I founded Guardian Secure Solutions, which is very much a sister company to Guardian Protection Force. And I founded that in March of this year. So very much a startup. I'm bootstrapping it. I'm doing both. And it has just been such a wild journey. But I'll say, what initially drew me into security and what keeps me here really are two different things, right? It was sort of happenstance, skill set, right place, right time. What keeps me here is being the guardians of the communities and clients we serve. That's the thing. No matter how exhausted I am, no matter, what's happening, we work 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do not take holidays, right? What keeps me going is that ultimate mission, right? The ultimate mission to be the guardians of the communities that we serve.
I love that. The guardians of the communities that we serve. How awesome. And I thought it was just a Marvel comic. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know if it's Marvel or the other one, but anyways, I've heard of these guardians and it just evokes nothing but a sense of safety and security. When I hear the word guardian, I'm like, someone's keeping me safe. Someone is protecting me and making sure that I am well and that I stay well. And so if I have someone else protecting me and making sure that I'm well, that frees me and my mind and my disposition to be able to live life and live it to the fullest without fear or anything like that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And if we're doing our jobs right, that is the goal.
Yeah, that is so awesome. What a great job. What a great mission and goal to provide that peace of mind, to provide that those feelings of just being safe and secure. So when you are thinking about your business, has there ever been a time when you've looked back and you were like, oh, I wish I had done something differently, or instead of doing it this way, we should have done something that way instead? And what impact do you think that would have had?
Every day. Every day. I have learned everything I know up until this point, trial by fire. I jumped in with both feet, not knowing what I was getting into whatsoever from day one. And so I feel like my whole career has been built on learning from my mistakes. And so when you ask if there's one particular time that comes to mind, no, there's a million. But I do think the takeaway from those million learning experiences, learning opportunities, I don't call them failures anymore. I call them learning opportunities. But the takeaway really has been that it's okay. And so it's really empowered me to make the decision to just go for it. And what's the worst that can happen? And the flip side of that coin is that's my job, is to identify for my clients what is the worst that can happen. We provide security consulting and risk assessments, and that's the root of my role, is to assist and ensure that my clients are given accurate risk assessments. So my whole job is to identify the elephant in the room, the worst case scenario. So for me, what I've learned is once you identify that, the worst thing, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's really actually freeing, and it allows me to get harebrained ideas like start a new business in March of 2024, and here we are. So it's been really a wonderful journey that I've been blessed to go on.
Wow, that is so great. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So do you have an example of like you're a day in the life of yours, maybe meeting with a potential new client? What does this risk assessment look like for them?
Yeah, it depends on the client. So we always start with a walkthrough. That process is no cost, no obligation, right? We start with the end in mind. We focus on what I need to see and feel and smell and hear. What is it that our clients need? So we have a team of security consultants that go out and do that. We all follow the same structure and format. So whether you're a Fortune 500 executive and you're looking for executive protection, which Guardian Protection Force, we specialize in armed security and executive protection, which is the industry term for what most of you probably refer to as bodyguarding, right? Hollywood has kind of dubbed that coin. That's executive protection is the industry term for that. So whether I'm doing an initial risk assessment for that executive, right, the one who runs a Fortune 500, which we do those, I don't want to say every day, but quite frequently, or you own the florist shop in the downtown of your small town, we're going to approach our assessment for you the same way. We're going to look at your vulnerabilities. We're going to look at how many doors do you have? How many windows do you have? What alarm system are you using? Are you using an alarm system? We map out, and we partner with a really great vendor who does crime mapping. And so we really look at what's your actual risk. Then we will do an individual profiling for each of these clients. So again, it's going to look a little different, but the process is the same. So you are the business owner who owns the florist on Main Street in fill in the blank XYZ city, right? And then you have the Fortune 500 CEO who maybe has, 3 homes, and then his business office he reports to on a regular basis. So we will do the profiling and assessment in terms of what's your exposure? How many employees have you pissed off? How many customers have you pissed off? Do people not like you for some particular reason? And fun fact, people always ask the question, it's a fun question, and I understand why people ask, but like, oh my gosh, do you bodyguard like celebrities, and who's your most high profile clients? And we have lots of non-disclosures, and we don't talk about that. We have provided executive protection services for celebrities and things of that nature, musicians and comedians and things like that. But really, our biggest portfolio of executive protection or bodyguard clients is attorneys and politicians in their off season. So when you ask the question, like, how many people have you pissed off today? Well, we know those categories, generally speaking, no offense to any attorneys or politicians out there listening, right? We just know, like, you do some controversial things. Maybe you take on a controversial case or client. And so there is a big exposure there. So maybe you don't actually need those services, but that's part of what we assess. So.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That is so impactful and so amazing and so great that you have a system in place no matter what the business looks like, whether you're an executive running the corporation or running the business, or you are a business owner with a flower shop on Main Street in Podunk, Iowa. It doesn't matter. The same process gets implemented across the board because crime knows no boundary, right?
There it is.
There are certain factors that are just evident and prevalent no matter what the situation is. So you can just rinse and repeat the same type of system across the board, no matter what. So, Ashlee, as you have built your business, what are your key leadership strategies for building a strong team in such a high pressure environment like security?
Oh, when you talk about those million mistakes, I'd say 60% of them are in this arena. So this is a fun question to answer. My biggest takeaway when it comes to building my teams is the mantra, getting the right people on the bus. And that is really the most critical component of my job. I love my people, and I love what we do, and I tell them with so much love and compassion every opportunity I get. If that mission to wake up every day and be the guardians of the clients and communities we serve, if that doesn't set your heart on fire with all the love and grace in the world, like, please go somewhere else. Like, I don't, no matter how much I like you as a person and no matter how much you like me as a person, if we're not on the same page with that mission, this just isn't the place for you. And it happens, right? You're a protector. You do this work for so long, and one day you wake up and the passion just isn't there anymore. And when that day comes, that's the day I want to help folks transition out. And I not the next day, not a week down the road, like right away. Let's transition you somewhere else to something else, whether it's in this organization or elsewhere. But that's been really the biggest takeaway and for me too, as a leader, if I'm not in the right headspace, there's no way that I can successfully lead my team to that end goal.
Right, right, absolutely. So your own personal mental well-being and physical is just as important as your physical well-being, because if you're not in the right headspace, it is hard to lead. It's hard to, and I can relate it to having to go on stage after having a fight with your spouse. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
How am I supposed to go out and deliver this awesome, encouraging, uplifting message, and I'm ticked off with my husband because we just had a fight? You know what I mean? So you have to be in that right headspace to, and I'm not even going to call it perform, but it's to do your job and do it well, because those things that are out here affect how you see things. And if your job is to see things, but you're all muddied up in the head, it's going to block your vision. And then, hopefully not literally, but we don't want you to become exposed because you're not in the right headspace to be doing the job you're doing. Does
Absolutely.
that make sense? Did I get that?
Yeah.
Kind of?
Oh yeah. And when we employ people who carry firearms, it ups the ante, it ups the stakes. They carry firearms, they're driving vehicles, they're working when everyone else is asleep, right? Like working grave shifts and working holiday, right? We have to. So we actually, one of the biggest things that sets us apart at Guardian Protection Force from our competitors in this space is the trainings that we do and the investment that we make into our guardians, into our officers. We really spend, and years before, people are always shocked when I tell them this, but prior to January 1, 2024, so this year, California had no mental health component required for somebody to become a licensed security officer in this state. Say that again for the people in the back. Prior to January 1 this year, no one was required to talk about mental health for these really, truly frontline responders, right? The security officers are truly most often the first people on the scene because they're already there, right? They're maybe the ones calling law enforcement or calling fire or ambulance or whatever it is. So we provided that training and training around those skill sets. We've done Tai Chi, we brought in Tai Chi instructors, we've done all kinds of really cool things to give our officers the education that they need to understand why that clear headspace is so critical for their roles. And then, the additional mental health trainings that we do, talking about mental health bias and the folks that we're working with and all of these different components. We've been doing that for years. And
Wow.
so truly something I think that sets us apart is having those conversations and allowing grace and space. If an officer calls me and says, I just pulled a grave and I'm signed up to work a swing and I don't think I can stand that post. I'm going to work with that officer. I'm never going to send an officer who tells me and opening the door to even have them feel comfortable to come have that conversation is just so important to me, because I never want somebody to go to work feeling like if I don't go to work, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to get fired, but I'm not in the headspace to be standing that post. So it's just something that's really important to us.
Right, absolutely. And I love that you take such a personal interest in your team. That I think is so, it not only endears them to you, it just makes them want to do well. When they know that they can come to you no matter what it is. You're not going to judge them. You're not going to threaten them. You're not going to make them feel less than. And you've shown this time and time and time again in how you care for them as a person first before the job. Like who they are as a person is more important than just having a warm body filling a space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, Ashlee, as you think about emerging threats and some solutions, what are the biggest security challenges that you see businesses and individuals facing today?
The majority, Guardian Protection Force is, again, the armed security company. We specialize in armed security, providing physical contract security and executive protection, or bodyguard services. We are licensed in the state of California. We're in the process of starting the licensure process in other states as well. Bodyguard services is a little bit unique, and we travel globally for that. So there's different, workarounds for executive protection in particular, but the bulk of that business is here in California. And I mentioned that because my startup, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit, but we are actually able to work nationally. So we're ready to go, whether you're in New York or California. So I'm in the midst of learning more about different markets and climates and the need for security. But what I can speak best to is California. And I do think it's important to note, it seems like the rest of the US tends to follow California in a lot of ways. And I think what I'm seeing is I'm beginning to unpack and understand other markets and what's sort of happening across the United States and throughout the world, quite frankly, is we are seeing huge spikes in mental health. We have a true mental health crisis, and I think COVID really impacted that. And so when we talk about emerging threats, that is absolutely a crisis for businesses, and certainly in California, it's already reached that level and that threshold of calling it a crisis. Homelessness is on the rise, and what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is the individual who's experiencing homelessness, was he having a mental health breakdown and then started dabbling in drugs to kind of self-medicate, or was he dabbling in drugs and then that triggered the mental health breakdown? Right? In most cases, we won't ever know the answer to that question, but the biggest threats are absolutely in that arena. The next thing that's emerging, we can talk projections and predictions all day, and nobody ultimately has a magic crystal ball, but there's certainly a lot of indicators that point to a looming recession. So when you add in financial crisis for folks, there's a lot of predictions that it's going to be just as bad, if not worse, than 2007, 2008 with the housing market crash and all of that. Again, I don't have a magic crystal ball. I don't know the answer to that question, but what I do know, and what is certainly my area of expertise, is that folks that are dealing with mental health issues or not dealing with their mental health issues, and then folks that are struggling and impacted financially, they're experiencing some adverse financial situation, that is absolutely a recipe for disaster.
Wow.
And so, when we look at these risk assessments, what we're really trying to look at holistically is like, what preventative steps do business owners have in place before we get to that place? I don't want you, unfortunately, the calls I get most often are from folks that are already in crisis. They just terminated an employee who's making threats, and they need to know what their risk exposure is. Does this employee actually have access to firearms? Do we know? And, I mean, they can obviously get firearms in most cases if they tried, but do they already have them? Did they threaten somebody with a firearm? Did they make a verbal or written threat? Is it an implied threat? Right? There's just so many layers there, but what I like to do is help businesses get prepared before we get there. So I'm spending, certainly in my startup, a lot of time and energy just out there educating clients and prospective clients. We do workplace violence prevention plans, which is the law in California. All businesses with 10 or more employees are required to have a written plan and provide training. It's the best law I think California has passed in a while, and it is really great. That went into effect July 1 of 2024. And so we've been really busy with that, just providing that education, providing those written plans, or you don't even have to hire me to write the plan. There's lots of folks out there, HR consultants and attorneys that'll write your plan for you. All come in and do your inspection, evaluate the plan, and then work with you on training, because I think that, an HR consultant or an attorney can maybe write the plan to meet the letter of the law, but to actually bring the plan to life, that is something I really enjoy doing and I'm really passionate about doing. And I love educating business owners and their employees and really teaching them why this is so important and not just another required mandated training that, California or whatever agency says you have to do.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. Workplace violence prevention management. I think that is so critical. And like you said, mental health, people's mental health is definitely being challenged more and more. Like you said, when life starts to, I won't say crumble, but when things get bad or people feel desperate or they feel like they just have no other way of handling things or dealing with things, or they have anger issues or whatever that looks like. I mean, I would think that a workplace violence prevention program would include something that looks like, what do you look for? What behaviors are being demonstrated that you should be looking for? And what do they typically lead to? You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm certainly no expert by any stretch, but I would think.
I don't know. You're doing a great job, Renee. I'm loving it.
But if you see someone start behaving in a different way than what they normally are, do, that could be an indicator of something more, something about to happen. So is it similar along those lines, the workplace violence prevention? I don't even think I'm saying that right. Workplace.
You nailed it. Workplace violence prevention, program management plan, fill in the blank. The last word's not nearly as important as the first three. You're doing great, Renee.
Thank you. But yeah, so I just think that is fantastic that you are providing that education across the board. So if people wanted to learn more, so say there's a business owner listening to this show and they're like, I haven't even thought about this until today. What is their next step? What do they need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to me on any of my social media accounts and I'll point you in the right direction. But if you are looking, you're like, you know what, I want to get my team some education about preventing violence in the workplace. We also do active shooter and we call active assailant or active threat. So we can kind of address a whole broad suite of potential problems. Lots of trainings in that realm. That's all through my startup, Guardian Secure Solutions. And so you can visit us online or you can shoot me an email and drop your info in and I will get you a package and send you kind of your different options and walk you through what that sort of looks like. And so that's a really great resource for literally any and every business owner. Again, in California, it's the law if you have more than 10 employees, but I would say, we could definitely put something smaller together. Maybe you're the florist downtown Main Street in Podunk, Iowa, and you're like, you know what? what if we just put something together? We can customize something like that for you, because I just think this is so important, and particularly for my female entrepreneurs out there. Unfortunately, the statistics show us that violence in the workplace predominantly affects women, far more than our male counterparts. And so I just really love educating and teaching women and everyone else about how to stay safe in the workplace, because we go to work to execute our passions, to make money to feed our families. Like, we don't go to work to be scared or to worry about what might happen, and not feel confident or empowered on what to do if that thing were to happen.
Right, exactly. And so, speaking of workplace, so most people work in a building, a brick and mortar building, and they have to leave their house and they have to go, and they have these factors to consider in terms of their safety. What if they work virtually or remotely, like the folks in our business? Is there anything we need to be worried about?
You know, it's something we've really been starting to address, and it started from more from a safety perspective, right? When you're working at home, and you're maybe in a more comfortable state, as you should be in your own home. What we were finding, again, I just study these statistics because this is my jam, but was people tripping and falling. And now you're like, you're at home, but you're on the clock. So, kind of, how do we navigate those dynamics? And so that really prompted for us to start poking around and looking a little bit more. Unfortunately, the biggest factor of workplace violence that's come up so far, and it certainly was exacerbated since COVID and then the rise of more families, everybody's at home, was domestic violence. And so really, like, finding resources and pushing out information for employers who maybe have employees all working remotely to look for those signs, and to be able to identify and then provide resources to those employees working remotely that says, you know, hey, like, if you need help, like, because remember, in many cases for that specific instance, it wasn't that the domestic violence maybe wasn't already happening outside of, like, before they worked outside of the home, but it was
Right.
exacerbated, right? Now you're spending so much time, and for many women, again, unfortunately, the biggest victims of domestic violence, work was their only escape from that, and it was their only outlet and their only place maybe where they felt safe. And
Right.
so that has been a really hard thing for us in our industry to sort of navigate and help educate and provide resources, because yeah, it's a really complicated situation for sure.
Right, right, definitely. And I feel for, any woman who's dealing with domestic violence at all on any level. And I'm grateful to you and your company to be able to provide, resources and tools and a place where they can at least call and get information. I mean, of course, there's the domestic violence hotline where people can call and get resources, information about, how they can stay safe. But even work, and I've never even really thought about the dangers of working remotely,
Yeah.
in this way. So thank you so much for educating us on this and this aspect of remote work. It's, pretty wild.
Definitely.
Yeah. So as we close today's time together, this has been so incredibly enlightening, and definitely, gets our juices thinking, our juices flowing in terms of, how can we be safe if we have a brick and mortar building, what we need to look for, how we need to prepare our people who are also having to come and go. I'm sure, is there proper lighting? Are there enough locks on the windows? Are there security guards available to walk people to their cars? All of those things. I remember thinking those thoughts when I did work in corporate America. That those would be just seems to be basic fundamentals that people should, at least consider as the safety of their team members. So thank you for what you do and providing all the resources and tools that you have. Tell us again how to reach you so that we can stay in touch after today's show.
Absolutely. And before I tell you how to reach me, I just want to say, well, it seems fundamental to you. Common sense is just not so common. And I do think a lot of it is upbringing, right? Nature versus nurture. Some of
Mm,
us grew up on, in rougher parts of town, and it was sort of ingrained in us from a very young age to consider things like lighting and am I going to be walking to my car alone at night? And some people, unfortunately, the vast majority of people that I work with, anyways, are not raised with that awareness or don't have that awareness for whatever reason. I won't make assumptions
right.
about how they were raised, but typically, it's they have never considered that that's something that they should do. So with that, I would love for all of your listeners to reach out to me and connect with me on my Instagram. I think that's a really fun way to connect. I just started my Instagram shortly before I started my startup, and so as I'm trying to grow that, so I would love I would love feedback on what would be really helpful. So at guardian.ceo, and I am really trying to build content around what my followers would really enjoy. And so I've kind of gone back and forth between just sharing about what I do in my speaking engagements and kind of shedding a little bit of light as one of the few women in my industry, and certainly one of the few women in leadership in my industry. But I'm getting some feedback that folks would like more practical safety and security tips. And so I'm trying to sprinkle that in and leverage that and put that together. And so I definitely want to build a place that, is a fun follow for you. And I don't like to be, doomsdayist over here, but I also like to really share the really pertinent things that especially business owners need to be aware of. And so I try to do a good balancing act there.
I love that. Like, what I would love to see is a video of a woman. Okay, this is just coming off the top of my head. A woman walking down the street and a guy getting ready to try to attack her, but she's ready. And she takes him and she flips him over her shoulder, and then she chops him in the throat with her heels.
I love that. I love that. We offer for folks that are local in Northern California, we do women's basic self-defense classes. We haven't done as many since COVID. But pre-COVID, we used to do them 4 times a year, once a quarter. And it was such a fun environment. And our founder and CEO, who's a black belt in ninjutsu, which is essentially a culmination of 9 arts. The Bujinkan is from Japan, and so he shows us all that cool stuff, and I get so fired up about that, and learning from him, and in a room full of women is so much fun. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with folks there, and that's where I share a lot of really business related tips and helpful things. So that's always an option. And then our website. So Guardian Protection Force has our own website. This is my new startup, Guardian Secure Solutions. So if you would like that information about workplace violence prevention, I'm still working on it. It's a startup. So you can just fill out the inquiry form there. I'm working on building out a special page dedicated to workplace violence prevention. So stay tuned. That is coming very soon. And so I would love to help you with that. Wherever you're at in the world, I can help with that.
I love it. And I love that you have an article in here about AI and robotic security. I cannot wait to read more about that.
This is, I didn't really give my spiel about Guardian Secure Solutions. I was so excited talking about everything we had to talk about. So Guardian Secure Solutions is my new startup. We specialize in helping folks all across the country leverage technology to help physically secure their businesses. So in a nutshell, that's what we're here to do. We're going to leverage. We have some really cool technology. We have a 24-hour security operations center. My goal eventually is that center is going to look like the Eagle Eye room. Like that's my goal. I'm slowly building towards that. The photos that you see are what we have so far, and my dispatchers are there 24/7. We respond and we connect business owners to resources in the moment, and we help with the planning and prevention as well. So I always like to point out, or one of those unfortunate things that I have to share with people, we're seeing, drastic declines across the country in police force, right? And so a lot of folks are accustomed, especially business owners, they're like, well, if I have something that happens, I'm just going to call 911. But here in California, just over the summer, there was a man actively wielding a machete, and it was 4 hours until police could respond. I was in Southern
Oh,
California. And
Lord.
so you look at that and you're like, well, just kidding, right? Like we need to have, again, let's not wait till we're in that moment.
Right.
And something horrible is happening. Let's have a plan beforehand. So what Guardian Secure Solutions does is we help relay and help you dispatch and connect with a physical security provider who can show up and who can be there for you. So
Right.
Guardian Protection Force is one of those physical security providers on my rosters, but I'm building a roster all across the country of great companies who are going to provide a real-time solution in the unfortunate event that something happens. Your building's being broken into at 2 a.m. You have somebody who's, maybe experiencing homelessness and maybe having a mental health crisis in front of your building and chasing away customers at 5 p.m., right? All of those things is really what Guardian Secure Solutions is there to help you plan for and prevent, hopefully.
Wow, I absolutely love that. I love that so much because you're right. The police force, that it's sad. It is a sad, sad situation that we cannot call 911 and get the phone answered on the first try.
Yeah.
Or it's busy, or they'll leave a message. When you're like, wait, I'm being attacked here. What do you mean leave a message? Are you kidding me?
What is Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And so the service you're providing, that extra layer of safety and security is just priceless. Just priceless. So thank you so much for that. And I can't wait to learn more about what you have going on. Congratulations on you starting your own business. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. This is definitely needed by not only women business owners, but all business owners. I hope everyone definitely takes you up on your offer to check out your website, get connected, learn more, and have buildings and businesses that are the epitome of safety.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. And so one last question. Was there a question that you wished I'd asked that I didn't?
I love that question. So I think the one thing I really love to share at this stage in my career is just shining the light on what advice I have for entrepreneurs out there at this stage in my career, but in the world, and just kind of the perspective that I have. And I think for me, the biggest piece of advice that I have is really going back to where we started and just not being afraid of failure. My favorite quote of all time is go big or go home. And know that it's okay to go home. What an incredible world would we live in if everyone was busy going big or at home recharging for the next big thing that they were going to do. And I just love empowering and sharing that message with as many people as I can, because I think for many years, I thought go big or go home meant you could only be going big and going home wasn't really an option. And I know that's probably actually how that quote was designed, but I really have spent the past decade kind of flipping that on its head. And I do think it's okay to go home and recharge until you're ready to go big the next time, rather than living in a world where mediocrity is just kind of the norm and accepted. Mediocrity is not okay as far as I'm concerned, but that's the only thing that's not okay. Recharging is okay. Doing great things is certainly okay. And you can be in either space for whatever period of time you need to be.
I love that. So well said, and a great way to wrap the show. Ashlee, you were made for something great, so go and be awesome.
Thank you.